Good morning, everyone. We are Group 3, and today we are very delighted to be here and present about the United Kingdom qualitative easing policy, the design, operation, and impact. Our group today have 8 people, namely me, is Thương, Miss Hoài Thương, Mr. Anh Khoa, Phương Thảo, Tú Anh, Đình, Khánh, and Quang Minh. So in the first part, Mr. Tu Anh will give some summary about the paper.
Hi everyone. Today we will talk about the quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is an unconventional form of monetary policy that the Monetary Policy Committee has carried out to stimulate the economy when interest rates are already low. And the ultimate aim is to boost spending to reach our inflation target of 2%. Next one is quantitative easing, is sometimes called QE or just assets purchase. The Monetary Policy Committee make decisions on QE at the same time as making interest rate decisions. There are 3 reasons for QE. The first one is in financial crisis from 2007 to 2009. CB kept the inflation rate under control by adjusting the overnight rate. The second one is interest rate cut to almost zero, so no signs in the economic recovery. The last one is QE is one of the tools to inject money that CB used to encourage banks. Next is 4 articles of QE. The first one is provide an overview, design, operation, and impact of the bank's asset purchase program in response to GFC. The second one is the scale and the speed of the program. Intend to reverse declining confidence and increasing risk of inflation falling significantly below target in the medium term. The third one is this change in asset price have effect on output and then inflation. So the article reviews a range of approach taken in recent Bank of England research to quantify the possible impact of those asset price changes on output and inflation. Next one is a part of Ngọc Mai.
From the previous section, the article focused on QE, which has been mentioned in the CIPF lecture. However, the module material focused on the unconventional monetary policy concept rather than QE. Purchasing financial assets by central bank money can increase the bond money holdings, push up the asset price, stimulate the nominal spending, and generate inflation to make the target 2%. The following slide show the transmission channel of QE. There are 3 channels working through the asset price: is signaling channel, portfolio balance effect, and liquidity premium effect. The asset purchasing program of BOE focus on the portfolio balance effect, concentrate on the long-term assets held by non-bank financial institutions, and it reduces the spread of long-term interest rate over the policy rate and the required return on risky assets related to risk-free assets. The following slide show the following slide is the operational consideration. The key announcement related to the assets purchase. In January 2009, the Bank of England assets purchase facilities was announced, and on the March 2009 meeting, the MBC decided to purchase £75 billion of assets over a 3-month period, and now is presentation of art.
Now I will show you about how does the article connect to the material. It's using both conventional and unconventional policy measures, quantitative easing measures. In article, according to the February 2009 inflation report, the asset sale policy was first announced in March 2009. When the QE program was announced, summing up the reports in goal, output for each QE new event shows an overall average reduction of just under 100 basis points. Most of the drop in gold years is not reflected in the interest rate. Immaterial hedges of supply reserve using OMO to target interest rate, mostly use repurchase transaction reports against highly liquid collateral. Next slide, please. The differences from the lecture is improved four parts. The first is assets and price quantity. Figure 6 shows a strong negative relationship between the two-day trend in the gold year coupon and the amount of the QE news. The decomposition of short-term expected gold years and forward years in 2-month window from the beginning of February 2009 to the end of March 2009. The second one is corporate bond and equity issuance. The issuance of equity capital of private non-financial corporations in the UK was particularly strong in 2009, reserving the net negative issuance in 2003. The third one is other assets. Other assets such as corporate and stock bonds and foreign assets replace cash to reduce the amount of money you hold to buy and buy other assets. QE notifications may contain information about the economy that makes sense for future business income awareness. The last one is inflation. Inflation expectations may increase as a response to the QE-related monetary stimulus. Next, Thương will show you about the strength of the paper. Thank you.
About the strength of this paper, firstly, I will give you some overview overall. This overall. Overall, this paper goes with the conclusion that the UK's quantitative easing has had an economically significant effect on both financial and economy by providing evidence for the impact of the asset purchase on financial market and the economy in theoretical and empirical. Next, if there's empirical analysis, is it done well? I will answer it very well. It offers several empirical studies to support the evidence of QE's impact in both theories and fact. In the operational consideration tab, it used other author research about the timeline of QE announcement. This provides a quick and sufficient overview of the QE's operation to the reader. In theoretical, it is also very good in the impact part. It offers convincing evidence about the effectiveness of QE on UK economy through specific figure and charts, in which the effectiveness of QE is divided into 5 aspects related to 5 channels of the QE. As you can see here, with the confidence, this paper used the confidence in number to prove, and in policy signaling, it provides the inflation expectation to prove. In portfolio rebalancing, it used the asset price and quantities. For the market liquidity, this paper used the wider macroeconomic effect. And lastly, to the money effect, this paper used the money and borrowing rate to prove. In the design and operation, this paper gives the clear example about the UK's fact to explain how did the transmission mechanism of the design of QE program and the QE operation. It uses both qualitative and quantitative methods to provide the effectiveness of QE to UK macroeconomics, especially with the quantitative approach. It uses two main approach is model-based approach and bottom-up approach, in which the model-based approach it has the SVAR approach, multiple time series approach, and monetary approach. This is a very good way. So next, Ms. Thương will give you some weakness and the solution for this paper.
Thank you for introducing me. So I will present the weakness of this paper. So overall, this paper played very well its role for introduce about QE and also its impacts on the UK markets. But besides it have some weakness. So firstly, I want to mention here is it does not mention enough about QE impacts on the macroeconomic variables, especially unemployment rate, inflation rate, and lack of the response to consumer spending after QE applied. And although this paper mentioned about the inflation rate and unemployment rate, but I think it does not enough. Next slide, please. So firstly, shall I show you about the household consumption growth rate. So a significant movement in household consumption growth rate were recorded, and it got minus 3% in 2009 in the crisis period. But after that, when pre-purchase asset program applied, it gradually reached pre-crisis level at 3% after QE program. So we can conclude that pre-asset purchase program succeeded in boosting spending and output growth. Next slide shows you about monthly unemployment rate. So in the red range, firstly, we can see that QE applied, but the unemployment rate doesn't change much. So until 2014, unemployment rate were down to pre-crisis level. So we can conclude that QE2 and QE3 effectively reduce the unemployment rate. The next chart is the inflation rate, and when QE1 applied, the inflation rate at 4.5%, and it's still high. It's even higher than the pre-crisis level, but after QE2 and QE3 program applied, inflation rate made the target at 2%. So we can also conclude that QE2 and QE3 success in the impact on inflation rate. So the next weakness I want to mention here is BOE balance sheet should be mentioned more detailed and drawn by graph to make easier to point out its establishing after QE applied. So here is the chart of liability side and asset side of BOE after QE applied, and you can see a very extreme change in the liability and asset side as well. Next slide will present about the. I think this paper will be better if can mention about unconventional monetary policy of other central banks, so that Fed, BOJ, ECB, and by mention about three central banks, we can make the cooperation between others, and we can conclude about the QE program in the BOE. So look at the chart, we can see that QE program in the UK provide a very good impact on its market in comparison to the ECB impact. ECB provide is not well to compare with other central banks. So next person will be present the current article.
Well, about the platform, all the related literature, me, Khánh, and Quang, we would like to introduce five research. Next slide, please. The first research is about the financial market impact of UK quantitative easing of Francis Britain. The first, I will show you the fit of the joint research with the paper. The joint research with the paper by all measuring the impact of the UK quantitative easing program on bond and other assets. And next, the two research use macro finance curve to show the estimation of the impact of QE directly, especially focusing on money supply. And about the differences of two research, in the joint research, he used FVAR approach to estimate QE, which includes the policy rate, government bond yield, and real GDP growth and CPI inflation using quarterly. And he also found the significantly economic impact of the macroeconomic variables. And in this paper, they mainly create a dynamic forecast of the yield curve using our macro factor to estimate the impact of QE under the assumption that QE is a key driver of the prediction error over this period. Next slide, please. The next paper here about QE and the new market is a accurate analysis of Martin Daniel and Michael Joyce. The first is the fit of two papers. The research of Joyce fit paper is the discussion of the evidence of the yield used to demonstrate the impact of QE and about the differences. Joy examines the reaction of yield to the 6 QE new event. They use high frequency intraday data to examine the market reaction to the same announcement about QE different view. And the result together suggests that there are a big Q market response to the bank of QE policy might not have occurred until the auction purchase begins. The market learn about the effect of the policy. Next is about the result of Khánh.
Thank you for introducing me. Today I'm here to present about the connection between this lecture and other paper and research to understand the point view between economical and researcher. So firstly, I'd like to read about the research of Ryan Thomas about the impact of QE on UK economy. So firstly, the first of this paper to lecture is most of the researcher using demand and supply framework to estimate the impact of QE on asset price and nominal spending. They use standard money accounting try to establish the impact of asset purchase on prop money holding. On the other hand, the big difference between two lecture is the lecture of price Ryan Thomas. They come to deeply to estimate the impact of QE by 3 steps. Step 1, step 2, and step 3. You can see from the slide. The second research is monetary policies in exceptional time by European and micro. And the same thing between two lecturers is the impact of central bank balances of ECB after using the QE. And on the other hand, the difference between two reports is in the research of the micro lender, the reports of monetary policy to assess the effect of non-standard monetary policy measure on some selected macroeconomic and financial variables. they divide in two scenario between the non-standard measure and the standard measure. So next part is Quang.
Well, thank you, Minh and Khánh, by giving a broad understanding about the field and comparison with other related research. So I would like to tell you about a little bit about the connection and difference between the joy theory and other research. So, the first is the positive channel that will control the injecting money to the economy. That injecting money to the economy where the possible several channels such as inflation, by lending and quantitative assets and asset price and rebalancing portfolio. So in addition, that the way to approach the free impact is that joy theory is similar with Meyer in 2009. That's using an event study and portfolio balance model and time series model. However, in the next 2 years, that Kotowski in 2011, that he published a research by compare and examine the relationship between the long forward interest and the size of central bank. So next slide, please. So in the next part, I would like to tell you more detail about the way to estimate the impact of QE to the money supply. The estimate by QE is similar with the Bridge and Thomas in 2012 by using two econometric models, such as an aggregate model named SBRAR and linking with the sectoral money demand that allow them to calculate how asset price and spending need to adjust to make the money demand consistent with the increase of money supply. However, in the same year, the Professor in 2012 published research that estimates a time varying model to examine the macroeconomic impact by QE. He used the data from the post-Greece crisis in 2007 and 2009. So, because of the limitation of time, we would like to tell you more information by answering the question. So, if anyone here has a question or something you may think unclear, please raise your hand and tell us.
Overall, this paper goes with the conclusion that the UK's quantitative easing has had an economically significant effect on both financial and economy by providing evidence for the impact of the asset purchase on financial market and the economy in theoretical and empirical. Next. If there's empirical analysis, is it done well? I will answer it very well. It offers several empirical studies to support the evidence of QE's impact in both theories and fact. In the operational consideration part, it used other author research about the timeline of QE announcement. This provides a quick and sufficient overview of the QE's operation to the reader. In theoretical, it is also very good in the impact part. It offers convincing evidence about the effectiveness of QE on UK economy through specific figure and charts, in which the effectiveness of QE is divided into 5 aspects related to 5 channels of the QE. As you can see here, with the confidence, this paper use the confidence in number to prove, and in policy signaling, it provides the inflation expectation to prove. In portfolio rebalancing, it used the asset price and quantities. For the market liquidity, this paper used the wider macroeconomic effect. And lastly, to the money effect, this paper used the money and borrowing rate to prove. In the design and operation, this paper gives the clear example about the UK's fact. to explain how did the transmission mechanism of the design of QE program and the QE operation. It used both qualitative and quantitative methods to provide the effectiveness of QE to UK macroeconomics, especially with the quantitative approach. It used two main approach is model-based approach and bottom-up approach, in which the model-based approach it has the SVAR approach, multiple time series approach, and monetary approach. This is a very good way. So next, Ms. Thương will give you some weakness and the solution for this paper.
Thank you for introducing me. So I will present the weakness of this paper. So overall, this paper played very well its role for introduce about QE and also its impacts on the UK markets. But besides it have some weakness. So firstly, I want to mention here is it does not mention enough about QE impacts on the macroeconomic variables, especially unemployment rate, inflation rate, and lack of the response to consumer spending after QE applied. And although this paper mentioned about the inflation rate and unemployment rate, but I think it does not enough. Next slide, please. So firstly, shall I show you about the household consumption growth rate. So a significant movement in household consumption growth rate were recorded, and it got minus 3% in 2009 in the crisis period. But after that, when pre-purchase asset program applied, it gradually reached pre-crisis level at 3% after QE program. So we can conclude that pre-asset purchase program succeeded in boosting spending and output growth. Next slide shows you about monthly unemployment rate. So in the red range, firstly, we can see that QE applied, but the unemployment rate doesn't change much. So until 2014, unemployment rate were down to pre-crisis level. So we can conclude that QE2 and QE3 effectively reduce the unemployment rate. The next chart is the inflation rate, and when QE1 applied, the inflation rate at 4.5% and it's still high. It's even higher than the pre-crisis level, but after QE2 and QE3 program applied, inflation rate maintained at 2%. So we can also conclude that QE2 and QE3 success in the impact on inflation rate. So the next weakness I want to mention here is BOE balance sheet should be mentioned more detailed and drawn by graph to make easier to point out its translation after QE applied. So here is the chart of liability side and asset side of BOE after QE applied, and you can see a very extreme change in the liability and asset side as well. Next slide will present about the. I think this paper will be better if can mention about unconventional monetary policy of other central banks, so that Fed, BOJ, ECB, and by mention about three central banks, we can make the cooperation between others, and we can conclude about the QE program in the BOE. So look at the chart, we can see that QE program in the UK provide a very good impact on its market in comparison to the ECB impact. ECB provide is not well to compare with other central banks. So next person will be present the current article.
Well, about the platform, other related literature, me, Khánh, and Quang, we would like to introduce five research. Next slide, please. The first research is about the financial market impact of UK quantitative easing of Francis Britain. The first, I will show you the figures of the joint research with the paper. The joint research with the paper by all measuring the impact of the UK quantitative easing program on bond and other assets. And next, the two research use a macro finance curve to show the estimation of the impact of QE directly, especially focusing on money supply. And about the differences of two research, in the joint research, he used FVAR approach to estimate QE, which includes the policy rate, government bond yield, and real GDP growth and CPI inflation using quarterly. And he also found the significantly economic impact of the macroeconomic variables. And in this paper, they mainly create a dynamic forecast of the yield curve using our macro factor to estimate the impact of QE under the assumption that QE is a key driver of the predicted error over this period. Next slide, please. The next paper is about QE and the new market. This accurate analysis of Martin Daniel and Michael Joyce. The first is the fit of two papers. The research of Joyce physics paper is the discussion of the evidence of the yield used to demonstrate the impact of QE and about the differences. Joyce examines the reaction of yield to the 6 QE new event. They use high frequency intraday data to examine the market reaction to the same announcement about QE different view, and the result together suggests that there are a big Q market response to the bank of QE policy might not have occurred until the auction purchase begins. The market learn about the effect of the policy. Next is about the result of Khánh.
Thank you for introducing me. Today I'm here to present about the connection between this lecture and other paper and research to understand the point view between economical and researcher. So firstly, I'd like to read about the research of Ryan Thomas about the impact of QE on UK economy. So firstly, the fifth of this paper to lecture is most of the researcher using demand and supply framework to estimate the impact of QE on asset price and nominal spending. They use standard money accounting try to establish the impact asset purchase on prop money holding. On the other hand, the big difference between two lecture is the lecture of price Ryan Thomas. They come to deeply to estimate the impact of QE by 3 steps. Step 1, step 2, and step 3. You can see from a slide. Next slide, please. The second research is monetary policies in exceptional time by European and micro. And the same thing between two lecturers is the impact of central bank balances of ECB after using the QE. And on the other hand, the difference between two reports is in the research of the micro lender, the reports of monetary in policy To assess the effect of non-standard monetary policy measure on some selected macroeconomic and financial variables, they divide in two scenarios between the non-standard measure and the standard measure. So next slide is one.
Well, thank you, Minh and Khánh, by giving a broad understanding about the view and comparison with other related research. So I would like to tell you about a little bit about the connection and difference between the joy theory and other research. So the first is the positive channel that will control the injecting money to the economy. That injecting money to the economy where the possible several channels such as inflation, bank lending, and quantitative assets, and asset price and rebalancing portfolio. So in addition, that the way to approach the free impact is that joy theory is similar with Meyer in 2009. That's using an event study and portfolio balance model and time series model. However, in next 2 years, that Kotowski in 2011, he published a research by compare and examine the relationship between the long forward interest and the size of central bank. So next slide, please. So in the next part, I would like to tell you more detail about the way to estimate the impact of QE to the money supply. The estimate by QE is similar with the Bridge and Thomas in 2012 by using two econometric models, such as an aggregate model named SBRAR and linking with the sectoral money demand that allow them to calculate how asset price and spending need to adjust to make the money demand consistent with the increase of money supply. However, in the same year, the publisher in 2012 published a research that estimates a time varying model to examine the macroeconomic impact by QE. He used the data from the post-crisis in 2007 and 2009. So, because of the limitation of time, we would like to tell you more information by answering the question. So if anyone here has a question or something you may think unclear, please raise your hand and tell us.